You're listening to the Informal Mystic Podcast, your destination for mind-bending conversations that explore metaphysics, energy medicine, and the mysteries of the universe. I'm your host, Blaire McDaniel. Hi guys, I just wanted to pop in before this episode and give you a little bit of kind of a precursor for what to expect. This is the episode where I talk about a really intense emotional experience I had in a former niche, and we call it the deconstruction space. And basically what that means is there are people who are leaving organized religion and they kind of have a community online. And so when I'm talking about the deconstruction space, that is what I mean. I also want to say, as I was editing, I could kind of just sense the tenderness in my voice. And my business coach always tells me to speak from scars, not wounds. And in a lot of ways, this is scarred up. It's been a really long time since it happened. And it's not something I'm really actively processing. But I will say that it was more tender to relive than I thought it would be. So yeah, kind of keep that in mind as you're listening. Makcum has been a really staunch friend and supporter of mine. And the entire time that I was active in the deconstruction space and beyond, he was just always there and just really showing me kindness and reflection, mirroring. And so I was super, super glad to be able to kind of talk to him about this. And I'm so glad I get to introduce him to you guys. So without further ado, here's the episode. Hi, Makcum.
Hi.
Hello,
Hi.
listeners. Welcome to the Informal Mystic Podcast. Today, I'm super, super excited to introduce you guys to Makcum Novikov. He is a brilliant thinker, really responsible activist. And we met, man, it's been a minute. We met, let's see, maybe 2 or 3 years ago. In
3 years
the
ago.
deconstruction community, the deconstruction space, we were both kind of transitioning out of organized religion. And that was where we met. And our relationship has sort of evolved sort of beyond deconstruction, really, even though we both probably will perpetually occupy that space. You're now kind of moving on to this very like somatic embodied activism combined with just like really responsible engagement with social justice themes and communities, and really incorporating spirituality in such a beautiful way in all of these spaces. So excited to have you on today.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me to speak. I was quite honored when you reached out, so thank you.
Who else would I reach out to? Oh my gosh, you're like my bestie.
Yeah.
If you haven't listened, I like literally call everyone who comes on my show bestie. That's like one of my favorite words because you all are all my freaking best friends.
Well, that's reflective of you and your amazing character
And lack of
integrity.
hierarchy, right? I have no more
Yes.
hierarchy. So
Yes. Yes.
you're all the best. But no, you really are one of my really deep friendships, very deep connections. You stood by me when I got canceled from the deconstruction space. So that was fun.
To be fair, it's not hard.
Yeah, it really
to get
isn't.
canceled.
Yeah.
No.
It's not hard to get canceled just like in general. And from the deconstruction space, whew, they are whew, cancel.
Yeah.
And actually I'm not super in the space anymore because,
Yeah.
it was time to move on. But from what I can tell, it feels a lot calmer there now.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you've noticed that or not.
Yeah, well, it kind of felt when it came to the deconstruction pace that we were all kind of growing together and we'd all kind of found the space at the same time.
Yeah.
And so there was definitely this shift in the collective where everyone was drawn to this space. And so in there was growing pains and there was a lot of different personalities that were taking up this space and different ideas. And naturally, people that are young and still young in just thought, young in, trying to make sense of their experience and also step into this new knowing. Naturally, there's going to be some things that they carry on from the spaces that they once previously occupied. And oftentimes we know that to be canceling people, especially in the Christian community in which I was raised. It's so much this or that. And so there is no allowance for nuance. And so naturally, whenever you have somebody who's trying to introduce nuance and it's not prefaced, there can be the outrage and hence the canceling.
For sure. Yeah. For sure. I guess since we're here, we're on the topic, I will kind of share a little bit of my story being canceled, and just my experience in deconstruction as a space on the whole. I've actually never really talked about it publicly. I've talked about it with like friends, and I joke about it all the time because it was such a paradoxical experience. I was so I hated it. I hated the experience, but I look back on it and I'm like, oh, thank heavens I did that. Like I got it out of the way and now I've really kind of like cleared a lot of fears. So when I was in the deconstruction space, I was really healed. Like I wasn't engaging in deconstruction a whole lot. Like I had healed a lot of my church trauma, a lot of my church hurt. And so I came into this space and I had just like, I didn't have the baggage that a lot of people in the space had. And so I was always the one, well, you know, my perception of myself, people may have perceived me differently, but my mission or my goal being in that space was always to help people heal and kind of drop the baggage and kind of clear the trauma so that they can get on with their lives, right? Like you don't want to deconstruct indefinitely. You're just choosing that as your identity in opposition to the identity that you had as a child or as a young adult growing up in the church. And so I was always like, we could not feel so, about everything. Which is sort of how I feel like we kind of were drawn to one another because I was offering education and just a new way to perceive our reality. Maybe this is a system that served us. Maybe this is a system that absolutely harmed us, but it did give us enough structure for us to be free thinkers. We did have enough structure to really deconstruct all of our, beliefs of origin, and now we have a really brilliant and beautiful opportunity to restructure our lives. So it was this exercise of both that I was always inviting people into. So yeah, if you want to say anything, you can totally. I felt like you were like,
No. I was honestly just listening because, like you'd said previously, you've never really spoken about it previously. So I really wasn't. I was really just listening just to listen, not really to have much to say.
Yeah. Well, okay, so that was my goal, to kind of invite people into this nuance, invite people into the space of both, not either or. And, the cry of my heart, it will always be non-duality. It'll always be like, yes and yes, and no. And I really like to bring people into this really discomforting, sort of like world altering space of, I don't, like uncertainty. Right? Like, I don't want you to know. We can't know. And so
I think it's because knowing is what got us into such muddy waters, and that there's a safety in having the audacity to say that I just don't know, but I hope that this is.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that totally, that sums up my medicine. I will like sit with you, staring you face to face and say, I will never be able to prove the stuff that I'm doing, but this doesn't hurt me. And in fact, it helps me and it helps you. And I've done some amazing things based upon these chosen beliefs that I have.
And with this, it's such a scary place to be because we've been kind of structured as people, especially in those religious spaces, to have the answer, especially if you were raised evangelical. There's such a strictness in knowing for certain. And so when you step into this new space, it strips you of any sense of comfortability and safety and security. And you are having to step out on the edge and say, I don't know. And that is something that we've been trained since children to not say.
Yeah.
And
it's multi-layered, right? Like, absolutely. That's what happened at the church. But this is cultural. This is just sort of where we are in this point in human history, I think.
Yeah.
And so, it was just a bunch of people who came from a space of knowing, and we transitioned into another space where we like knew again, but we knew the opposite of what we knew before. And so, there was just
there was still a lot of collateral damage in the knowing.
Yeah. Being able to really not having that sense of flexibility, not having that sense of like, oh, you're doing something different than I would do, or, oh, you're doing something not the status quo, was a challenge for the space, I think. Yeah. And like, you know, this is just my opinion. You may be in that space right now and, you know, you may think I'm like smoking some crack or something, but that's okay. We
don't have crack. I'd probably do shrooms, ayahuasca. I'd assume that, but not crack. You're too classy for that.
That's true. I don't do crack. I'll smoke a J.
Yes, easily.
But I've never smoked crack, not yet anyway. You know, life is short, and I am young. Yes. And I'm needing to try all the things. Yes. So if anyone has a crack, I can borrow.
Watching this.
Oh yeah, we really don't do drugs. Especially me and you. Like I'll go and hang out with my friends who weren't evangelical Christian. Yeah. And they'll be like, "You've never done this?" And I'm like, "No, I don't know how to roll a joint. You're going to have to roll it for me."
I mean, I smoke every once in a while, but it is not something that I do. It's more just recreationally. Like maybe I'll do it like once or twice a year, just when I'm out with friends, but it's definitely not something I do habitually.
Yeah, we're still trying to overcome our innocence and purity, the innocence and purity of our origin. We need to get into some trouble, Makcum.
I know, I did.
Yeah, absolutely. When you come here, we'll try to wrangle up some trouble one day. One day Makcum's going to come visit me. Yeah, let's just try meth. Not a big deal. Not a big deal. Yeah. It was fine in that show. Jesse Pinkman turned out fine. Yeah. So, okay, where was I? Okay, yeah, we were in the space. There was a lot of like, this is the only way, which really sort of harkened back to this is the only way of, you know, organized religion. And I was always just like, maybe there's another way. Maybe there's another way. Maybe there's another way. Maybe we could just think about it differently. Maybe we could just be a little looser with our opinions. And I had watched people just get demolished over and over and over and over again. And sometimes there was some inherent problems with what they were doing or what they were saying, but there was no discussion. It was automatic demolishment. Like they were just done. Nobody, you know, nobody could talk to them, or they would risk getting completely demolished themselves. Yeah. And so I had watched that play out so many times and found myself in this space of like walking on eggshells so freaking hard. And I was watching yet another person get completely demolished by the complex. And there were always like a few big players and they'd be like, oh yeah, ha 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 ha. And they'd, you know, make a real fun experience out of it for themselves. And then all the rest of us who like weren't that popular, we were all just like, oh my God, it's happening again. Well, I mean, that's, of course, that's my perception. But I watched them do it again. And it was like a person that I actually, I liked her. She was like a PhD. And she was like trying to help people become deconstruction coaches. Nobody liked that because they're like, oh, you can't quantify this. This isn't something you can quantify. It's a personal journey for everyone. I'm like, well, yeah, obviously, but there's like themes in every industry. There's themes. And I promise you, I've done the same thing as you in a lot of ways. And that goes for anyone who's deconstructing. Like there's core tenets of this as an energy. And so I got on my stories. I was like texting my friends and I was like, guys, it's happening. I'm doing it. And I got on my stories and I was like, you know what? We're just really mean. Like we're just really mean people. And I'm just kind of tired of everybody being so mean. I would just love for everyone to just stop being so mean. And I would love for everyone to quit policing how I choose to spend my life and how other people choose to spend their life. Maybe this was a program that other people needed. And
it was such a silly thing because I wish I had somebody to kind of walk me through the general direction of what is typically done when in deconstruction, to kind of give me those guardrails for first, because like anything, we always start out with guardrails in everything we do. And so I thought it was weird that people's reaction to someone opening up a a program to assist people in the deconstruction community, none of which, from my understanding, did they ever say, this is the only way to deconstruct, or this is none of that. It was just this, the mere thing that she was actually insisting that, hey, here's an
if you want it, you can do it.
Offer you, if you want to, come join me.
Yeah.
And now we're starting to see that that's actually things that I'm starting to see people doing, which is the very thing that was and it initially came out like 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago, or whatever.
Yeah, for sure. And there were other coaches that centered their coaching around deconstruction. And it was just like blowing my mind. I was like, what is going on? Like, I'm so confused as to why we had to be so mean. If you don't agree with her, that's fine. But and the disparity in the amount of followers was also like a big deal for me too, because she only had like 3,000 followers, which I only have like, 1,690. And like, I'm not saying the follower count is really that important at all. Like I'm happy with my followers. And, whoever wants to come and follow me, I'm totally here. And I'm committed to making a really safe and happy, healthy community surrounding mysticism and spirituality. But the person who made fun of her had like 30,000 followers, and they like launched or put on their feed this like little certification, like, oh, I graduated with my diploma in learning how to be a deconstruction coach. Ha 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 ha. And like, my certification isn't backed by any mental health organization at all. And so this like 30,000 follower account was making fun of this 3,000 follower account. And there was no discussion. It was all just like, guys, we got
bandwagon.
Woo, yeah. And so it was
very much herd mentality.
Oh, herd mentality for sure. And I was just like, you know what? I am so done. I am so done walking on eggshells. I'm so done fearing for my life.
Why am I now? How did I find myself in an environment that is operating still from the culture that I left?
Yeah, it's absolutely that. And so I made that post on my story, and then I went on to this guy's page with the 30,000 followers. And I was like, yeah, it is exactly like us to be making fun of someone who belongs to our community, who's doing something that we don't agree with. This is so on brand for us. And then that just started its own avalanche, and people were in my DMs. People were like, just so irresponsibly engaging the topic, and which the timing is just absolutely ridiculous. My cat, as I posted this story, my cat like met me in the energy. This is a cat I had since junior year of high school. I am aging myself, you all. He was an 18-year-old cat, and I got him when I was in high school. And he was I can't even talk about him without getting deeply emotional still, because I miss him so bad. And my cat sort of met me in my meditative space and was like, hey, it's time for me to like pass on, and I would like for you to try and help me do that. And so I'm like, no. Like, that can't be real. I know that that's my ego. Like, he's not doing bad, and he was doing bad. And he came, I was like, that's my ego. You're just going to have to send me a sign. And so he comes out of the bushes, tries to poop in the grass, and then just like pukes everywhere. And I was like, no, I have to navigate both of these things like together, because the shitstorm had been like, I pushed the car, the snowball down the hill, and it was snowballing, and people were, popping off, and everybody's going crazy. And my cat was dying in the same breath. So, there were a couple creators who like reached out to me, and they were like, hey, like, what's going on? I want to hear your opinion. And I'm like, I can have a conversation with you, but I can't do it right this second because my cat's dying. And so instead of like waiting for a conversation, they just went on and like made their opinions, made their, funny little posts about how, my call for nuance was a sign of white, like privilege, and just all the things, all the buzzy things to do when you're, calling somebody out. So it was just such a hurtful experience because I considered these creators my friends, and really was like enjoying having conversations about, you know, thoughtful, like social justice oriented things. And they just like went on. And so the next thing you know, the day after my cat passed away, like really peacefully on my lap, I had called a vet to like come to my house and help me put him to sleep. And it was just one of the most grief-filled experiences in my life. But the day after, these two creators are going live with one another to talk about, well, the first person they canceled, and then by extension me. And I couldn't even go on it. My friend had to go on it, and she had to be like, it was okay, it's fine, everything's gonna be fine. But yeah, after that, it was just like crickets. It was just sad for a really long time because I had worked for a really long time in the deconstruction space and really made no traction. And as far as people I took with me, you're almost the only one.
Oh yeah, look at me.
Yeah. Go Makcum. Go Makcum.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm happy
Yeah.
to have. I think the reason it was so easy for me to stick by your side was because I sincerely did not see the big deal to begin with. I did not feel like any of this was like it felt so blown out of
Oh
proportion
my
to what
God, it
actually
did.
was like you would have thought someone like stabbed your dog or something.
Yeah.
Like it
Or like
was
I was
so,
dropping the N-word, or like,
yeah,
you know, like
all of the
or
horrible like things to cancel someone over. And it was just the fact that someone started a program course over deconstruction and you were saying, you know, this is a good idea. Let's allow more nuance.
yeah, I mean, I
And
wouldn't even say it was a good idea. I
yeah,
was not, I would never take the course. I'm not interested in taking a course like
yeah,
that. I was just saying, if she wants
we
to
could be
do it,
nicer. Yeah,
let her do it, you know, and
yeah,
don't be bitches to one another. Don't
yeah,
everybody quit being fucking assholes. That was all
yeah,
I was saying. And if she canceled the course, went completely dark on social media, I think we talked like one more time, and I have completely lost touch with her. I have no idea where she is now. But yeah, it was blown so far out of proportion. It was like they smelled a molecule of blood in the water,
yeah.
and they were like, guys, it's time, let's mobilize. And I was just done. I was just freaking done with it. So
Yeah,
yeah, that
that's
would
a
be my
very,
experience of being canceled. And I'm just so glad I got it out of the way now.
yeah, yeah,
I'm a lot less afraid of what I say. I say a lot of crazy stuff these days, you
yeah.
know?
When it comes to like being public and sharing my opinion, I've never really been scared of getting canceled. I don't think that was like ever my main fear. My sincere fear was always that I would say something that would actually hurt and impact
Yeah.
a community. And that because we all have the potential to say things out of turn, to say things that are ignorant. And I know that about myself. And so it was always a fear that I would hurt people in like the wake of, for instance, getting canceled. I would not even be heard about just the apology aspect of it. Like, and so thankfully I've never been canceled.
Yeah.
But
There's
it's definitely
time.
there's still time. I'm only
Yeah.
25.
Yeah, you're only
And so
25, and
yeah.
we could probably do crack together, and then we could figure
Yeah.
out a way to get you canceled.
Yeah. And so yeah, I think that it was never the fear of getting canceled, but it was just about the impact that I would actually have on people
Yeah.
in some sort of bad way. And that would be
Yeah.
really,
Yeah. I mean, I feel so, I just feel like I'm so, like, I know myself so well. I have such an intense self-awareness that I continue to work on because of what I do, because of my job. And I have people that I work with that I know my intentions,
yeah,
and I just trust my intentions, you know, like I think there's definitely space, always space to learn and grow. There's space to be educated. There's space to educate yourself. And you know, nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect,
yeah.
but I trust my intentions so much, you
Yeah.
know?
And I think that's something you do so well in just our friendship is that anytime we are having heavier conversations, you always make a point to be like, am I pushing too hard? Am I is my intention being seen, or is there like a harsher impact that you're experiencing? And so just your own awareness shows that your intent is good and that you never wish to have a harmful impact in anyone's life. At least that's been my experience as being your friend and kind of seeing you, you know.
Yeah. I also want to point out that maybe I feel like intent and intention is an undervalued thing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've
Like
never
in
thought of
social
it that
justice
way.
communities, like maybe we really aren't
Well,
prioritizing people's intent
I
very
definitely
well.
I tend to operate from like that well-known it's not about the intention, it's the impact that counts. And so, but I think there is also a little bit of nuance that can be acknowledged in that. Whereas at the end of the day, the impact was this, but you can also emphasize the intention in your initial statement and then make the rights out of what had happened, if that makes full sense.
Yeah. Again, I think this is another opportunity for non-duality. I think that prioritizing both intention and impact is, excuse me, prioritizing them both is responsible social justice. You know, like you can go and look at people and, oh gosh, what's that song? Oh, free on my, let me sing it into the mic for you. It's that song, free your mind and the rest will follow. Tell me the song, someone in the listening audience. It's In Vogue is the singer, and I think it's called Free Your Mind. Maybe it's not, but there's this line that says, "Be colorblind, don't be so shallow." And now, in the year of 2023, like 50 years after that was released, I think, we now know that being colorblind is a bad thing, right? Like it's not a good thing to be colorblind. But the people who were raised on that song in their early, 20s, early teenage years were like, oh my gosh, I have to push towards being colorblind because this is what the media and the culture is telling me to do. And so as far as intention goes, some of these people haven't had opportunities to expand their consciousness and get with the new programming, right? Get with like
That's
our
where,
new.
so I work at a place that is definitely socially backwards. And something I am constantly having to practice is the pause. So whenever I do hear someone who says, makes the colorblind statement or whatever the case may be, I always have to take into account their culture, their background, what is the context of the conversation that we're actually having, and do I feel like the statement in which they made is actually with malintent? That's the first thing that I do. And then after I am able to see that they are not a threat, that they're not trying to in any way, I then, if it's appropriate to do so, then say, well, actually, being colorblind isn't necessarily the goal that we should be trying to achieve. Instead, and then fill in the blanks.
Yeah.
And so it's
I think
about
that, sorry, go ahead.
Oftentimes in, activist circles, especially those that are very well educated on and up to the term, but you know what I'm saying. They tend to they have more loyalty to trying to prove a point that they know more than they do about actually trying to engage in thoughtful conversation that can potentially in someone or actually get them to understand something from another perspective.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
So
and I would even add that okay, this is a new way to think about it. But the ability to be so educated may be from a place of privilege, right? Like
100%.
I know a ton of people who
100%.
don't have access and wouldn't even know where to begin to get it. Right. And so it's like their life is their education. They're working paycheck to paycheck. They've got mouths to feed. They've got rent that's astronomical these days to pay. and they never got a chance to sit in that wisdom. And I'm thinking there's education. Like I know a lot of people who just can't sit and read.
Yeah,
And so
that's a
like
privilege in
how,
and of itself, I think. Actually, I was at a meeting for my work and we were discussing different forms of diversity, and my own ignorance was very much came into play because as I was sitting there, and there was people listing different forms of diversity, it never once dawned on me that education was a diversity, like a lack of education was a form of diversity. And that for me was a huge mind expander because especially in progressive circles, there's a lot of people that are, you know, they pride themselves on so much education, but then they, in the same breath, are um, disrespecting and being so harsh towards those that just don't have the access or the time, while in the same breath saying, fighting for these very people that don't have the access and time.
What a
And
cognitive
so,
dissonance.
yeah, yeah. But that's where I think it's about being, again, practicing the pause and being conscious of what are the privileges that I have right now in this moment that I'm judging this person for? Where do I stand in this? And how is my privilege showing in me judging them for not having it? But also being able to use that privilege that we do have to hopefully, if they're willing to, listen and learn and teach. And yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I learned this especially well in my own marriage, right? My husband has been working his freaking ass off since he was, I don't know, like 15 or 16. He was like working right out of the gate, 2 full-time jobs, and he's been working and working and working and working ever since. And then he married me, and I'm younger than him, and I'm like, let's have kids. And he's like, oh, here we go. And so he had 2 kids, and I'm a stay-at-home mom. And I'm like, why isn't he healing at the same pace that I'm healing at? Like, why? What is going on? Why can't he wake up in the way that I'm waking up? Well, it could be because he's working like all the time. Like, have you
To
thought of
afford you the
that?
privilege to actually learn and heal and grow.
Exactly. I know. It's like it's a really beautiful thing. And like looking at the soul contract energy is I just love it because it's really humbling for me. And it definitely kind of takes me off my pedestal. And he's sacrificing so much for me to be able to do this work, to be able to sit down on a Friday in November, which this is going to be posted in January, but just to sit down and record a podcast, to have the access to time and space and mental health that I've gained over these years of having alone time and being able to listen to podcasts and being able to read books. And he just doesn't have that because he works, 40 plus hours a week trying to sustain and feed us. And so being able to take that in and be like, hang on, how would this work with my husband? Is it okay for me to project this onto a person like him who is just pure of intent, and just so kind and loving? And could I take that lesson that I'm learning from our relationship and project it out to all the other people? How many other people are working even harder than him? He's a business owner. He gets to take time off and he doesn't have to get PTO and blah, blah, blah. And there are people who are working even harder and they're in deep, deep poverty. And for me to be like, well, you didn't say that word right.
Yeah.
Sorry, you're out.
Yeah. Your
like
views are outdated. You said something wrong.
Yeah, that's dehumanizing. That's not, that's counter to
It is
social justice.
prideful. It's
Yeah,
rooted
absolutely.
in a space of pride. And there is no compassion evident in that sort of scenario.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's why I think the practicing of the pause is
That's beautiful.
The self-reflection to see, here I'm judging them, but what am I exactly judging them for? And what may be standing in the way for them to have access to that information that I'm so pridefully judging them for not having.
And not only that, but it always pulls us into inner work, right? And anytime we feel judgment in the body, that's a moment to pause, right? There's a difference between observing something as like, this isn't the reality that I would choose, or this person is being harmful, and judging them as less than, or putting them down for it, right? Like, we can identify something as not right. We can identify something as hurtful, without being triggered or judging towards them.
Yeah, that is very human too. Like, it is a natural reaction to see something that is threatening, or to see something that is harmful and be able to see it for what it is. But I think there has to be a little bit of a shift in saying, yes, this is threatening, yes, this is harmful, but also, and then fill in the blank.
Again, it's both. It's non-duality. Just keep on coming on back. I say that word so many freaking times.
But that also, I think I want to stress that this also doesn't, this isn't also a way to scapegoat responsibility either. So, for instance, when we see a teacher who is in a school classroom and they're making ignorant comments towards a Black student of theirs, and like, we can say, they were tired A, B, and C. They didn't have, but it still doesn't take away the responsibility that they are in a position in which they are responsible to not be to not be acting out in a way that is harmful towards their student.
Absolutely.
And so there's a way to hold accountability and compassion and space for them, while also
encouraging them to more.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Here's the problem with this system that we've created. It is so combative that our immediate, and this is also, there's just layers of like culture and human experience, and like, this is what the ego does, but we've created no space for mistakes, right? None. And so learning or shifting or changing, becoming something different, is automatically threatening to the ego and just to the three-dimensional self, right? Like, down here, we've got such dense vibration. Anytime you challenge someone, anytime you say, hey, you could do this better, people are automatically tight and fearful and afraid. And so the path forward in human experience, and by extension social justice movements, is getting out of these shame cycles, right? Like, it can be accountability without shame. Yeah.
Accusatory and shaming, and passing immediate and premature judgment. Because that, I think I said this to you earlier, is that it is excluding a large group of people that really do want to help in the progress towards, because they care about the people that are being impacted. So when we prematurely judge them, when we prematurely cancel them, we're letting a lot of people out that could be actually very helpful towards reaching the progress that we like.
Yeah. It does feel like social justice communities are not as effective as they could be. It feels like we have such a polarized experience, right? Like,
I think that a part of that, and I was thinking about this last month, was how, because I work in a space, in a workplace that is very opposite of my views. I'm trying to think of the right way to put it. It's very opposite of my views. And something that I've noticed is that when you have conversations with people, these really heavy conversations that are usually political or religious, it's really important for myself, when I'm talking with these different groups of people, to be mindful of the words that I'm using, because oftentimes, once a person of a certain mindset and worldview hears a certain buzzword or lingo, they immediately close down. They immediately become resistant to anything else you will have further to say, and you've already lost the conversation.
Yeah.
So for myself, whenever I'm talking about, anti-racism work, which is something that I'm very passionate about, when I'm talking about the things that are happening to when it comes to the policies that are impacting LGBTQ students throughout America. There's a lot of the time that when I'm having these conversations with people, I don't use the word anti-racist. I don't use the word what's that thing that we're what's that Black literature that a lot of people are up in arms about in schools?
Oh, critical race theory.
Critical race theory. I don't use that terminology because that has become such a buzzword for the right.
Polarization?
Polarizing language.
Yeah.
And so, although that is a technical
it's
term,
not
and
it's not the fault of the language. It's just the system. We built such a crappy system.
Yeah, and it allows so much room for resistance. And so when I'm having these tough conversations, I always leave the buzzwords and the lingo out of it. And I always go back to the issue. I always try to bring the heart back into the issue. So for instance, I was having a conversation with a coworker of mine, and we were talking about reproductive rights, abortion rights. And I talked about a time that I had actually drove my friend to get an abortion. And when I was talking about the story, I removed I brought the heart back into the story, which I told about her experience, her life, and why the choice to have the child was just not possible for her, and what led to that decision. And I noticed that the person was a lot more receptive, and their ideas about this false stereotype that women are just all willy-nilly going out as a form of just a form of healthcare, which I personally don't see an issue with it because but for them that's a big thing. And so bringing the heart back into the issue and then being able to see the humanity behind the policy I've seen to be very impactful in allowing people to see things from another angle that maybe they've never been introduced to. And they have no other choice but to remember that person. They have no other choice but to that policy and that issue is no longer just some abstract theory, but it's actually attached to a human being who is having a real lived experience. And that in and of itself is so powerful to be able to offer people. And I didn't use the typical language or try to fact check them or try to bring statistics into it, because just as many statistics as I may have, I'm sure they also have. And so when you can leave the extra very important information, by the way, out of the way and actually just come back to the home of the issue, it's supremely effective in shifting people's perspective of how the world works and how these issues work in individual lives.
Yeah. It's almost like people actually care about people. People's fears are leveraged. We've created these systems based on fear and control, a lot like the one we left. And it's all a very large scale. It's taking place at a very large scale on the world stage, really. But we've created this us versus them.
Very dualistic.
We've created duality, right? And so what you're doing when you are inviting someone into a third way of thinking about things is you're just turning people back into people. Humans are humans, and given the choice, I mean, I don't know for sure. I can say for me, absolutely, if there's a hurting person right in front of me, I'm going to do whatever I can to help. That's why I've devoted my life to this as a career. I help people heal. That's what I want to do. I don't want anybody hurting. I want no one hurting around me. Even the people who have harmed me in the past, I want them to stop hurting so they can stop harming. Right. But when we see humans, we are moved by our own humanity. Right. We've all had a human experience, and it doesn't take a lot to evoke the beauty of that love. Connection.
And
the desire for belonging.
We become so siloed in our own groups that we've lost the connection to the person that we're standing in front of.
Exactly.
I kind of hinted to you yesterday about a conversation that I'd had with my mother. And we were talking about the issues going on when it comes to LGBTQ issues and when it comes to education in schools and representation and media and different things like that. And I told her, and she had said she felt that there was an issue with that and all that. And I said, well, I'm so thankful that there was that representation, because if I did not see that there was someone out there that looked like me, that walked like me, that talked like me, that experienced similar things that I did, I would not have finished this course of life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so having representation to know that I am not alone, that I am not a freak, that I am not this predator that, you know, a lot of conservative media wants to depict me as. Like, to see someone who looks like me is one of the most powerful things. That's why, you know, when it comes to the banning of books is such a big issue, because there's so many spiritual gifts and so many enlightening things that come alongside education and reading. To be able to read a story and find yourself in that story in another realm, the magic that it has is just inspiring, and it also transforms perspectives. It transforms worldviews. I mean, because think of me, like, years ago when I operated in a different worldview, if it was not for the gift of books to shed those ideas and those beliefs and had the courage to do so.
Yeah. Just as a little side note, everyone who doesn't read fiction, maybe should consider it, because fiction is some of the most healing medium we have, because we really are finding ourselves in that archetypal world, right? We're identifying with the characters, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful. And so, you know, people always say, oh, I don't have time to read fiction. I've got so much nonfiction. Here's looking at you, Max.
Yeah. Like maybe 5 books that are fiction that I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
And the rest are non-intellectual mumbo jumbo.
Yeah, I know. Which, you know, I right now I'm reading The Tools and The Breath, or How to Breathe, or something like that. Anyway, I'm reading nonfiction right now. But just with regards to banning books, gosh, what a dumb idea. What dumb idea.
Yeah, anybody who
talk about polarization. I'm like, you guys suck. And
I mean,
the work is never done, right? Like, internally, I must drop that.
Yeah. If you're familiar with anything relating to history, one of the first things to go in a fascist world is the books.
The books, yeah.
That reflect the myriad and the beauty of diverse stories.
Yeah.
Because they want to create. Also watch Handmaid's Tale, because that is very reflective of America. Just saying.
Oh, Handmaid's Tale is a rough one. It's a rough one.
It's a rough. Oh, by the way, like, be prepared to be
trigger warning.
Triggered constantly. I even remember messaging you and being like, I'm done. I am like going down a dark rabbit trail, because this is very hard on my nervous system.
Oh, it is rough. Don't watch it masochistically. Watch it slow and sort of steady, and make sure you have support when you're watching it, right?
And I did
make
not
sure you have
do
a little
that.
bit of distance.
I did not do that at all.
For sure.
I just went into it nosediving.
Which I did too. I actually read Handmaid's Tale like long ago, when it was, you know, required reading for high school or whatever, and was just obsessed with it. It was such a good book. I love dystopian nightmares, except for when they become dystopian realities. So that freaking sucks. But
isn't it crazy? That's actually, so Margaret Atwood, she had said that in the creation of The Handmaid's Tales, that she drew everything from actual history, things that had happened, because she didn't want anybody to be able to read it and say that this was fantastical and that this was never possible. So she drew from real events as inspiration for the book. And so I think that's just
I mean, it's brilliant and beautiful, and it needs to keep happening.
But once you read the book and you know the origin, watch the series, it's shocking to think, oh my gosh, all of this is based on real things. That's frightening.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to talk a little bit about maybe the concept or idea of tokenism and how that kind of interplays with our work. I'd also like to talk a little bit about having maybe like unified consciousness as like the backdrop of ultimate reality, and like how we can engage in the human experience while holding this like we're all energy or we're all source in the backdrop, and really do it responsibly. So why don't you pick? Let me put you on the hot seat. Go ahead and pick.
I have no idea.
Well, why don't we start talking about tokenism then?
Okay.
Because here's the thing, and I've been in business for almost, let's see, in January, it'll be 3 years. And it's always like so on my mind that I don't have a huge follower base or client base of BIPOC people. I have a lot more LGBTQ people. I identify as bisexual. And so I'm sort of on that spectrum, and I'm sort of an energetic match for that energy. But it was always something that I felt very judgmental towards myself about, because I just didn't have a whole lot of Black clientele or BIPOC, followers or people just in my energy. And there were times in my life where I sort of found myself like angling, like, oh, there's a Black person, I can hang out and talk to them. Oh, there's an Indigenous person. And then that was a couple of years ago, but got real reflective about it and was like, God, this feels gross to me. Like the energy of that feels so inauthentic and so
Problematic.
Ew, cringe. Yeah. And so I quit doing that. But I have yet to really manifest a lot of Black people in my energy or in my space, or BIPOC people rather. So how do we cope with this external opinion that I need to have lots of Black people in my energy and BIPOC people in my energy?
Well, for one, I think I'm trying to think of how to answer this, because this is such a loaded
It's loaded. It's loaded, and it's a
question.
little bit tricky.
Yeah. So for one, I think that there is a space for obviously self-reflection. Like, what is it about the energy that I'm getting off that is not inviting people of diverse backgrounds and diverse experience into my space? But then there's also, whenever it comes to, the work that you do, which is energy medicine and things of that sort, it's also knowing about what is your role in the collective. So for instance, it would not be, I think, correct or for you to be marketing yourself for Black people because you've not lived a Black experience. You don't know the ins and outs of the just the trauma that comes with being a Black individual or a person of color in America. And so for one, it's about that self-awareness of knowing, oh, my work is not necessarily for Black individuals because they need someone who has experienced similar things to them. So then it is your role in this work that you're doing to then become, I guess, in some ways studious and know about a lot of different things that affect different cultures, but also coming into community with people of color that are doing similar work to you, so that when there is a person of color and a person that is looking for assistance in their life, you can say, I don't feel like I am the right person for you because I don't know the ins and outs of your experience, but I know someone who would be amazing in being able to kind of work with you in kind of dealing with the experiences that are special to you, just as being a person, but also a person of color, which comes with its own baggage in America, unfortunately.
Yeah. I find it really valuable to identify that not everybody is my ideal client, right? Like I've had people come and we've thought about working together, and the longer I kind of sat with it and like checked the energy to see if I would be a good fit for them and if they would be a good fit for me, I just wasn't. And so I've kind of sent people on their way sometimes, referred to other people that may fit better. And it does feel irresponsible for me to be like, come on, Black people, come work with me.
Yeah. Just for the for the ego drive of it being like, I work with Black
guys, chuck me. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's just more of the cringe, right? That's like being
now if
in
you
the
ended
energy.
up creating a collective work, like for instance, you started hiring in people for your practice, then it would be your responsibility
vital,
to have, and it would be vital to having people of different walks of life being a part of your collective. That's where your role would be in that. But just you as a white woman working for Black women or people of color, it'd be almost absurd in some regards.
Yeah. And again, that doesn't mean that if you're a Black person, I like don't want to work with you.
Of course
right?
not. No.
Like
it's not about wanting to. It's about would it be helpful to them, to that person, for you to work with them?
And like if you can come into my energy, and if you have someone else helping with the parts of you that I can't relate to, you have multiple avenues of support, and you're looking for like support in mysticism, developing your spirituality, developing your connection to energy, I can 100%. Help you with that. But for me,
but if someone's coming to you for specifically the Black experience and Black trauma,
I don't have that.
That's not your position, but that's also not to say that you are not open to Black clientele and different things like that. It just had to be the right energetic.
The match. We have to be a match. And a lot of it's like intuitive, right? Like my people come to me with intuition. I don't feel like I have a client who is like, oh, I'm completely cut off. I don't have any intuition whatsoever. If you're drawn into my energy, there's a huge part of intuition that's already playing in your life. I just know it. And I've got experience with that too. Most of my people have pretty vibrant intuition. And so, again, I'm not pushing that away as a possibility or as a potential reality. I'm pulling in the energetic match. And if we align with one another, like perfect, chef kiss. I will never be like, oh, I don't work with Black people. That's just awful. But again, I'm not going to try and pull someone in as a token to like post on my Instagram to be like, look how enlightened I am, everyone. Because sometimes I can see that performative piece in social media and in people's medicine. And I'm just like, you can tell
just
when
in
it's
people's
a performance.
lives. Like there's not a time that I'll scroll through Facebook and I'll see someone who has a friend that they've completely tokenized for the mere purpose of getting, attention on social media, which I think is just absolutely deplorable and repulsive. Because horrible. That person is not a token, that is an individual with
human with a whole experience
that deserves. And and I've experienced that personally, as I've literally been introduced as being my gay friend.
No, I've been not the gay friend.
as, and to me, it's just so not cool. It has such like an ick factor to it. And it makes me really reconsider the relationship, because I'm always like, wait, why is that the first thing they think of when they're introducing me? Because I have so many amazing qualities and so many interesting things about my character that I would think someone would think of first than just who I happen to find attractive. Or how I
Makcum, my brilliant friend, Makcum, my amazing friend, Makcum, my incredibly stylish friend. Those are ways I introduce you. And then I'm like, oh, he's also gay.
You'll see the flames coming behind him.
It's like pretty obvious, I think.
Obviously.
I don't need to tell anyone you're gay. You tell them yourself with your energy. So but it is really interesting and intriguing for me to kind of reflect on my own medicine and my own client base, and to see who I am drawing in. I have lots of little LGBTQ babies, and that's an energy that I can sit really well with and work really well with. And I've by extension, I've pulled a lot of that in. So always a good reflection, always a good opportunity to see, is your activism authentic? Is your activism a genuine expression of your desire to heal the world?
Or is it feeding something that I feel insecure in, whether it is, like unaddressed racism that you hold within your body is you by having Black peers and associates in something that you feel as though you need to show off. You're not racism.
Yeah.
Which often in a lot of different spaces.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, asking yourself those important questions, like, am I friends with people because they're Black, or am I friends with them because I care about their character, their nature, their just what they have to offer me as just in friendship. And the reason I can speak to that is because I've had people in my life that I felt like the only reason I was in their life was to make them not homophobic.
Check a box.
Like I was just someone to check off as, oh, look, I'm not homophobic, even though you continue saying, homophobic remarks or whatever the case may be. Yeah. Or the thing is that oftentimes see that people are homophobic to me, but they hold very homophobic views towards when it comes to just the progress of making queer people feel safe in America.
Yeah.
For things that are the antithesis of, like, they'll say they care about me, but then their voting says otherwise. Yeah. And so those kinds of things that I always take into account. So all of that to say that I'm not a token. I am Makcum. And I'm much more than just my queerness, which is actually quite a lot and fun too.
Yeah, that's an excellent part of you. It's one of my favorite parts. So, but you definitely are a whole ass vibe. Yeah. You're not 100%. Just my queer friend. So, okay. To wrap us up, in fact, I have no idea how long we've been podcasting. I didn't even look at the time. This could be an hour and a half long episode, guys. But I really do feel like this is a good, like, kind of closing point for us. This is the real journey that I'm on in my engagement with social justice things and social justice topics. My medicine is built so strongly on this belief that we are all one thing. We're all source consciousness. And as such, we have sort of fractalized ourselves into these human experiences. And I even believe that once we are, when we're ready to incarnate, we'll kind of sit back and we'll look at all of the things in our life and we'll work around with the other souls in the room, and we'll be like, okay, do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? Oh, this is going to be my experience. This is how I'm going to live. This is how I'm going to die. And then we'll drop down into a lived experience. And it's this beautiful flow of transcendence and humanity, right? And so I find myself really struggling at times because we all hold such grief. We all hold such pain at times, and we're watching the world sort of unravel right in front of us. And for me to kind of swoop in and be like, oh, well, this is our chosen experience. It feels irresponsible.
Spiritual bypassing the moment.
Yeah, it absolutely can become spiritual bypassing. And so do you have any advice for how to hold both of these beliefs, at the same time well?
Which beliefs again? So sorry.
So the belief of we're all one thing, we're consciousness as such, and we've chosen our experiences, and these experiences are fucking awful and they're brutal, and I hate it here sometimes.
Well, I think these experiences are calling us to become creative in creating new systems. And because what we're seeing right now is that these institutions and systems that we were told was meant to keep us safe no longer have the capacity to hold all of human suffering. They just don't have it. And so whenever we're experiencing these singular points of suffering, I think that's asking us to get creative, but also get creative in thinking about, what do I actually need? What is something that I can put into place that will assist me in this point of suffering? But also, sometimes there's not always an answer to that.
Yeah.
And we just have
uncertainty.
We're back to uncertainty. And that's where I think we have to rely on the people around us to be those that we can kind of lean on their shoulder and let them be God for us.
Oh, I like that. I really like that. Yeah, it's, I almost feel like uncertainty and non-duality are really similar things. Maybe not the same thing, but it's this capacity to hold both. And when it's time, I can tell sometimes it's not time, right? I can tell sometimes it's not time to be like, well, you chose this experience, right? Like, for instance, my best friend is a widow, and her husband passed away. I think it would be 5 years ago, last month. And in the heat of her deepest, darkest, griefy moments, people were like, "Oh, this happened for a reason." Like, what the hell?
Yeah, that's horrifying.
Do not ever tell a grieving person who's in the throes of grief that everything happens for a reason.
But this was meant to be that God is using this as a point of growing them spiritually.
Yeah.
It's horrifying.
It is horrifying. It is horrifying. And if you have ever done that, this would be me inviting you into self-reflection, and like that's not how you would treat a grieving person. But over the course of my relationship with my best friend, I have slowly invited her into my belief of this may have been a choice that you all experienced. And at first it was a challenge for her to be like, excuse me, I didn't choose this horrifying grief. But then it was this really beautiful moment of freedom where it was like empowering to her. And she's like, okay, like, what can I gain? What can I glean from this experience? What was it here to teach me? And sometimes it's the most interesting thing. It's one of my favorite experiences of life so far.
Yeah, and it doesn't always make the most sense, like in like the intellectual.
Oh, it doesn't. It's not an intellectual exercise.
Yeah, and that's where I think the mix-up can happen. Like, for instance, a lot of the experiences that I've had have been very challenging and have really harmed me in so many ways. And just the idea of me choosing those experiences is so hard. But and I'm still like kind of in this, like, did I choose it or not? But I also know that in those experiences, I have a choice in how I'm going to respond to those experiences. And now looking back, I can definitely see the ways in which those, whether they were a choice or not, I made a choice to allow those experiences to develop me in ways that I don't think a lot of people have the privilege of. The privilege and opportunity to explore those really uncomfortable interior spaces.
Yeah, I can get behind that. And I will point out that this is a chosen belief of mine. It's not provable, but it's a belief that I have found a lot of personal freedom in. And I want to allow people not to choose it if they don't want to choose it. But I will say,
if it rests well in the body.
I mean, I don't think it will at first, though. I think it'll be a challenge for everybody at first.
Yeah, I think that is a challenge. I think even with me, I'm still chewing on it and digesting it. And, but I'm also not resistant towards it either. And so just the allowance of it just taking up space and allowing it to kind of do its thing while I'm living my life, while I'm allowing life to teach me, may become something that is developed into my, one of those like the frameworks of my life.
Yeah, like a pillar or something
that I don't want to be resistant to, because maybe there's great wisdom in it,
Say that last part again. You broke up.
As others have found in it. So there may be wisdom in it, that obviously, because others have found wisdom in it, so, and comfort in it. And so why would I just throw it to the wayside when obviously if it's been impactful, I can allow it to sit there, but I don't have to adopt it until it comes to me fully and
I'm just going to say, like, look at this freaking growth, bro. Like, this is beautiful, because the Makcum that I met was like, is it just very like needing to know, and then you've just really relaxed into this beautiful space of flow. And so it is such an indicator that you do your work well, right? The space that you're engaging and occupying, it's not something that's flighty and like, you're not doing it because it just seems like the right thing to do. You're doing it because you're so thoughtful about it, and you're really handling it well. And so I just really applaud you for being able to like work with belief in that way, because that's the type of engagement, or that's the type of belief, consideration that will change the world. Like,
absolutely.
I'm not going to push it away from me just in case. I'll just let it sit here. So
I think something
gorgeous.
you said. So as I've kind of been in the space of kind of exploring my own spirituality and deciding what does spirituality mean to me on just a personal level, this idea of like things like guides, and this idea of angels, and going into meditation and having those spaces, like that was something that I was initially so resistant to. And I felt that it just didn't make sense to me. And there was a fear because of the indoctrination that I was raised up in. And as I've kind of allowed those old beliefs to kind of like move away, like I pushed them away, and I allowed something new to take place, just to see, just to get curious, because why would I be resistant towards something that could potentially be the very thing that could help assist in my freedom and in the next step? And so you'd said something in a podcast that I'd heard recently, because I got lucky and was able to hear something early
the little
on.
Debut.
And you'd said something, you or your friend had said something that was something like experience is proof, and that's enough. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is so true, because I remember whenever I began this journey, I needed so much validation. I needed so much like proof for me to even consider something. And for me to be able to trust my experience is one of the most freeing things, because it may not make sense to anyone else, but it's obviously taking a toll in my life, and a positive one, in fact. So allowing myself to come to a place where I don't need external validation to prove to me something that is very real within me. Like, my experience is enough, and I don't need anyone else's opinions on that matter.
No, I'm talking about embodied activism. Look at you.
I know.
That's embodiment. You're literally describing embodiment when you're saying these things. Your experience is enough. And freaking beautiful. But just to kind of loop back around to this concept of all experience is a choice. I'll end by saying that for me, I had a long stint in victimhood. I was a victim for a really long time, and like life just sort of, it felt so mean and punishing. And so for me to shift into this belief system, this chosen belief of like, I chose this, everybody else chose their thing, and I will honor that choice and be so grateful and just inspired by the choices that the whole world and the whole collective is making for one another, since we're all the same thing. It's been freedom from that victim mentality. No, but I am not a victim of anything. I am in complete control. I am entirely autonomous, and I can work within the constructs that I gave myself.
And you can be creative too whenever you do see things that are barricades from from the reality in which you're wanting to experience. You can become autonomous in that, and come up with solutions to be able to get over those barricades, whether just by yourself or creating a collective in which others are assisting you in tearing down those barricades, because that's, again, a choice.
There's absolutely no problem that I can't solve, especially when I'm leaning into that collective space and into that collective gratitude, and depending on the relationships that I've kind of called in and chosen, and the relationship of the all, right? It's all a relationship. There's not a facet of experience that isn't relating.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Even if it's to the self. So yeah, that would be why this is such a serving belief for me. But to wield it responsibly feels like such a big deal. You cannot just willy-nilly, hey, you chose this, hey, you chose this, you chose this, you chose this.
That's more of a thought to be said in sacred spaces in which people know that they don't have to be resistant and defensive when they're like, that's something that people usually work into that space of knowing, I would imagine.
Yeah. So it's in session with my clients. It's something that I have to have developed rapport, right? So like in our first session, I mean, some people are ready for it in the first session. But like with you, I would not have led with that.
No.
Like I had to develop a lot of rapport with you for you to trust me enough for me to offer you this really like sort of intense new belief. New intense and something
that wasn't, that couldn't be exercised through intellectual understanding, which is something that I tend to occupy most comfortably, is the intellectual space. And so to have to go through something, so to have to understand something apart from just my mind and kind of allow it to settle within the body was quite the different, but it was something that actually led me to a different path and led me to making different choices for how I choose to participate in life.
And I feel like it's also part of why you're doing such a beautiful job in the embodied activism space. Because you are able to pull in this challenging belief, and that sort of kind of cuts that certainty piece out and really cuts that victimization out. And it gives you this like creative fuel to be like, okay, well, this isn't a problem we can't solve. Right? Like we're not trapped. We're capable of solving these problems creatively.
We're only trapped with the beliefs that we've agreed to.
And so we don't have to keep agreeing.
We don't have to keep agreeing. I mean, I'd sent you a message this week that was something to the effects of, who convinced us that we could rely on these systems to protect us? Like, who convinced us of that? Because if any intellectual person would look at history and see that these systems were never meant to protect us. They were meant to give us a little bit of crumbs so we would stay docile, so that we would stay demure and accepting of the conditions in which they were placing us in. And so when we can actually start to expand our perspective and say, oh, wait, these systems aren't here for me. These institutions aren't going to protect me. Okay, so what now? How can I get creative? How can I participate in this struggle differently? What is this calling me to?
The answer to that question would be our parents. And then who taught our parents? Well, their parents taught their parents. And then their parents, it's just back and back and back and back. And
that's why history is so important.
Like, and that's why history repeats itself.
Yeah. And looking at the patterns and the ways in which people were kind of socially constructed to operate in such ways. I mean, I'd read the book Caste by Isabel Wilkerson, which discusses the racial caste system in America. And that was profound. That was such a shift in the way that I saw my role when it in America, and also the way that society was intentionally structured to keep the order. And so I think that also plays into every other facet, whether it comes to women's rights, whether it comes to just being a human in America, and institutions that are in place, and the classism, and the list goes on.
For sure. And I will say that systems are designed to keep us safe. The problem becomes when the systems are sort of obscured in favor of power. Right. And when there's power in play, the systems won't keep us safe. And that's why church is failing. That's why the religious, organized religion is failing. That's why our American political system is failing. Globally. There's a lot of political systems that are failing. And it's because we're idolizing power instead of the preservation of fellow man.
And also, I think whenever it comes to safety, like for instance, I always go back to the story of Adam and Eve, in which Eve had the audacity to challenge the things that were going to keep her safe, and she said, "I don't want safety, I want freedom." And so, having the audacity to say, "Yes, these systems may keep me safe, but what are they making me sacrifice in the process of this security?" And that's really challenging, because then not just that, you have to question I think of like the mothers who have gone divorces and have lost everything. And they did it for the sole purpose of protecting themselves and their children. Yet they lost every financial means. They lost their communities. They lost their religion. They lost so many things for the sake of freedom. But those very institutions were there to keep them safe.
Yeah, like in air quotes, quote unquote safe,
for the sake of for actual safety, for actual safety, superior confidence and safety just in your own being.
Safety in your own being. Yeah, there's something really powerful about that sentence.
Yeah. Just the autonomy that opens up like the vision of what autonomy can actually look like for us.
Yeah.
Apart from institutions, apart from culture.
Yeah.
That we choose to protect in this.
And so what I'm hearing you say by extension is that it's not a bad thing to be on the counterculture. It's not a bad thing to be like on the edge, which is where I live there all the time. I'm literally getting on Al Gore's internet like, hey guys, let's meet your guides. Hey y'all, I'm a psychic. I can see your energy body and talk to dead people. And so for me, it's been a long journey to be able to like just let it all hang out. And like I've had so many seasons of my life where I've been real tight and tense about what I can do and what I believe in for the sake of this like societal safety, which is not really safety. It's just, suppression. And I'm realizing that what did you say? Safety in my own self. Safety in my being means that I sort of divert. I kind of go off into the wild blue yonder a lot of times by myself. And then what happens when I'm out in the wild blue yonder in the counterculture, in the communityless wilderness, is that I find other weirdos like me. And I'm like, hey guys, do you want to weird out together? Let's counterculture together. So it's so encouraging to me to really be able to sort of quantify why these systems of safety are actually not safe, and why me going out and leaving the systems behind was my safe option.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Because you could actually feel confident in what you were doing, which is the greatest freedom that you could ask for.
And I could never have gotten there unless I was willing to lose it all. And like, I didn't lose everything. I lost a lot. I lost church. I lost some friends. I didn't lose my family, which is a big, a lot of people lose their family. They may be like, ooh, she weird, but I didn't lose them. And I didn't lose my marriage. So a lot of people lose a lot more than me. And the things I did lose, I was okay with.
Were never meant to stand.
They were never meant to be there. But I really did have to get super comfortable with the idea my parents could hate me. My parents could hate this and like never want to talk to me again. Or my husband could divorce me because I'm talking to my guides all the time. Or, just on and on and on. And really detaching from that need pulled all my energy internally. And I knew that I had me, and that's all that mattered.
Yeah.
I knew that I would be okay. Oh yeah.
There's power in that. And that's almost like, it's that idea that anything that happens external of you cannot actually impact the freedom that you have within just your own self.
Absolutely. Which is a really challenging belief for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Right?
It's not an easy place to come to either. It takes a lot of self-finding and actually being able to come to a place where you can decide what you actually do believe. Because if I could not come to this place if I was still operating by the expectations of that which was exterior of me. I could never have come to this sense because I was operating for them. I wasn't operating for me.
Yeah. And if we kind of pull that back into that social justice space, it feels like it really fits. So, all right, are we ready to wrap up? That feels sort of like a good stopping point.
I mean, if you want to, I'm not in any rush today.
He's like, let's podcast all day long.
All day.
Well, I mean, is there anything that you feel compelled or like really, really like drawn to talking about?
No, I think
going.
really, I mean,
a two-parter.
I think my main thing that I really want to stress for people that are in activism spaces are to be patient with people, to hold space for their imperfections and their imperfect views, looking beyond what is at the surface level and see what was their intent in saying that. And because I think when we cancel people, it's saying that they're irredeemable, that they're not able to be educated, that they're not able to be to do better. And when we do that, we've lost the battle. We're not able to create any change with that.
We perpetuated the same cycle. You're doing the same thing to it's one side of the system or the other side of the system. So getting transcendent of the system entirely is the thing.
It's the goal.
Yeah.
And it's a practice. It's not something that you can do once and you're done. It's something that is an everyday self-reflection to ask yourself, how am I participating in this world? And am I living by old software that still needs to be scrapped? Because I know for me, whenever I kind of walk into the deconstruction space, to use that as an example.
Yeah, okay, an example.
Had there was so much of my framework was still operating from that evangelical worldview. I just flipped the stories. I just flipped the things that I was pronouncing, but it was still the same software. And so I had to really kind of disassociate from both and say, how am I still operating an evangelical heart that isn't reflective of the space that I really want to end up being in?
Yeah. If you've ever heard me talk about ego or teach about ego, I have a class called Ego Birth that I teach. And you have your ego of origin, which would have been for me and Makcum, the Christian church. That is a facet of our ego of origin. And then once we kind of exhaust that as an ego or an identity, we will slip into an oppositional ego, which is the same ego, but just like against that origin ego. Yeah. And so a lot of people in that deconstruction space are acting out that same pattern, but they're just pushing back, push.
Different mask for, but it's still the same operating system.
It's the same energy. And what I want to point out is that it's not a bad thing. Right? Like the ego of origin is a necessity. The ego of opposition is a necessity. And we have to work our way through both expressions of that ego in order for it to finally die. It will die. And it'll get to its end.
Yeah. And it's also important, like something that I've had to do is like whenever I do see people acting out in ways that I personally wouldn't choose, I also have to respect their journey and where they're at in their space, like where they're at in their life, and realize that just as I say, like every is a path to walk, everybody has, like every experience is necessary. And so although I've come to this place of knowing for myself and what I think will work better, their role is just as important to this whole life that we're doing, because they're going to help somebody who may be at a different, at a different point of awareness, that they need that kind of rage. I needed rage. I needed somebody to tell me when I was pissed off about things that had happened in the church that
that anger is really validating.
Yeah.
And so, in all of this, I want to make sure people don't hear us saying like, oh, well, y'all suck. You shouldn't be this way.
We're much more evolved than them.
Yeah, we're still evolved. But it's all needed. I know I was like talking bad about the book banning earlier. And that was just me great. Like,
but I agree. Yeah, it's not great. But
again, even the book banning, it has its necessity, has its role and contribution to our collective experience. And so, while I don't prefer it,
we need the light. We need to know what darkness is to see the light.
Yeah. So while it's not an experience I prefer, I will invite that into my larger worldview. Like I'll allow that to be part of my experience and to push myself, right? I'll push myself into accepting it. I'll push myself into finding gratitude even there, because it doesn't help me to remain in rage or remain in anger, right? Anger is a tool. It's not a lifestyle. And when it becomes a lifestyle, that's what is one of the most harmful things. That's why I manifested a freaking autoimmune disease. I was so pissed off about everything that my body was like taking the toll. Oh yeah. I was so angry about everything. And so anger is needed, but it's not an indefinite experience, or it's not being used properly.
One of the wisest things I had heard somebody say to me was, anger is a necessary experience. Rage is a necessary experience. Being mad is okay. Just don't set up your tent there.
Yeah.
Like you can stop there for the night, but don't stay there forever, because you deserve more than rage. You deserve to experience the broad experience rather than just staying in the place of rage and that place. That's just not, it's not full. It's not
individually.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Individually, we as people, we as humans don't deserve that, but collectively too. Like we are, I don't know what it's going to take for us to get beyond the anger and the rage at the collective level. Because we're an angry culture. We're angry and we're ticked off, and
there's a lot of there's a lot of justified anger. Like it's never to dismiss their experience, but it's when can we eventually move past and start getting creative, start getting into the nitty gritty of it and actually creating change, which is really what we should be trying to do.
Absolutely.
And using our rage, using that anger to create,
to as a momentum. My friend Jen, sorry, say that again.
It's a fire under our ass to create the things that will actually create progress and change for people.
Yeah. My friend Jen always says anger is a vehicle. Like anytime she starts talking about anger, I know, she's gonna say it. Anger is a vehicle. And so if our anger isn't inspiring movement in a direction, then it could just be, I don't know, another ego validation.
Yeah, you're just
it could neutral. And you're not effective either if you're remaining in anger and it's not kind of tempered by this sense of love for humanity. So, and this is, again, I really want to point out that this is a practice. This isn't something that we get right all the time. And I'm sure me and Makcum aren't even talking about it all the way right? Like there's
much more that could be probably said.
Yeah. And probably said better. There are people who spend their lives researching this. But I still feel like we can talk about it. Because this is sort of our creative contribution to these spaces.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
So, and especially you, this is what you do for a living.
Yeah. Just a little bit.
So this like conscious activism and embodied activism, this is just what you do really well. So, I feel like that wraps us up pretty well. I feel pretty
happy with the direction we went.
Yeah, I like it. If you guys have any questions for us, you can find me at Informal Mystic. You can hit me in the DMs. If you have a question for Makcum, you can find him at Makcum Novikov, right?
Makcum.Novikov.
Makcum.Novikov. Okay. Makcum.
Yeah, Novikov.
Novikov. Novikov.
Yeah.
If you're looking for help becoming more embodied and conscious in your activism, head to Makcum's page. If you are looking for maybe like someone to talk to your group about embodied activism and like how to do it well, Makcum is your guy.
Yeah, I just really do my best.
Yeah. And y'all know me, Informal Mystic. Come on over. Let's talk about energy. Let's talk about guides. Let's talk about the higher self. Let's, wander off into the wild blue yonder of counterculture. So it's going to be fun. We're going to be fun. Thank you all for tuning in, and we will see you next time. And that's a wrap, folks. If you're enjoying these episodes, please share them with your friend or leave me a 5-star review on whatever platform you're listening on. I would deeply appreciate that. Next week is the first part of our grand finale. We're going to be talking to Kim Ray from Rooted Alchemy, and we're also going to be talking to Jen Howard from Gaia Heals. I know you guys are probably excited to have her back, and I'm just really looking forward to those 2 episodes. So be sure to tune in for those, and I'll see you next time. Stay mystical.